Hi everybody, it's really great to see everybody back again this year, and thank you for coming along to my session. And I want to talk about, we're all building these AI and integration applications. We're all running at 100 miles an hour, and I think people are going to start soon thinking about how we're going to support all this stuff. So at Turbo 360, we'd have to get ahead of the curve and think about the problems that people may not have caught up to yet, and think about what people are going to look for in a support experience. And today I'm going to do some very demo heavy stuff to show you guys some of the things we've been working on. It's not all just for AI, there's loads of integration bits and pieces in here as well, and I'm hoping there's a lot of things people can take away for ideas where we could potentially help you. So really quick introduction. So for anyone who doesn't know me, I've been quite a regular speaker at the Integrate Summit over the years. So today I'm the product owner for Turbo 360. So I spend most of my time helping design the features we're going to build, working with our engineering team and talking to customers about how to solve real world problems. So there's really kind of a few use cases I'm looking at. Tomorrow I'll be talking to people a bit about cost management, which I know everybody really struggles about how we manage the cost of the solutions we build. But my heart really has always been integration, and today I'm going to talk about how we use Turbo 360 to help with integration. I want to just do a little call out as well, because I do a lot on YouTube and stuff, and I've got quite a popular little playlist there that some people may not have come across about. From an architecture perspective, where do you use which technology? Logic apps versus function apps, data factory versus logic apps, etc., etc. And so if you haven't seen that before, a lot of people have told me they find it really useful for understanding this landscape. And I think, for me, I think this is a great little image of how I feel today. I don't know about everybody else, but I feel, we've got all this stuff up here that we've been talking about for a few years now. And, we've got logic apps, functions, event hubs, data gateways, container apps. There's so many different things we can use to build the apps we build, all the interfaces, and it just never gets any easier, does it? There's never less. There's always more to think about, more complexity, more choices. And even this week, I was thinking, well, actually, we're going to throw a whole load of new stuff in here. So off the top of my head, we've got business process tracking. To do that means you're going to be using ADX. We've talked loads already about AI Foundry and all the cognitive services capabilities. And then we've got, but that's just the tip of the iceberg for AI. There's all these other kinds of AI resources. And then we've got, things like hybrid Kubernetes, logic apps, and there's just more and more. So I feel like help. I'm sure everybody else feels at least as bad as me. And with Turbo 360, we've always been about this idea of how do I simplify the cloud operating model? So, I've probably got a room predominantly full of developers and architects, and you guys are going to design and build solutions, and then you're probably going to hand them over to somebody to run them, and that big challenge is as you build these things, the more the demand is on the support people to run it, the more they're going to keep coming back to you to say, I need help to do this. And Turbo 360 is really about that transition piece of, can I make it easier for those people to do support so you guys can all focus on building the next great app that the company needs. That's the value developers and architects need to be focused on, but we need to help these support people. So I thought a little bit about the journey for Turbo 360 over the years and some of the things we've talked about. We think really back over here, we've got the original Service Bus 360, and we rebranded and supported logic apps, and then we added the business activity monitoring feature years ago. And then a couple of years ago, we added the cost analyzer feature, which Saravana alluded to a little bit earlier. And then today, one of the things I'm going to talk about, actually I forgot our rebrand even last year as well. Today I'm going to talk about our business activity monitoring features, where we've added some really good improvements to it since last year's Integrate that I hope will help people with some of these real world problems. Now, we need some demos to show these things. So I'm going to show some demos. I'm going to be a bit sort of optimistic with my demos. I've got lots of opportunity for demo gremlins and demo zombies and things like that to go on here. So we need some good demos to show the technology off. And so to begin with, I thought, well, Balan earlier was talking about app modernization. So AI is going to empower app modernization. I thought, right, we need an app we can modernize. So it's about nearly 10 years ago, we had the original Minecraft demo in Integrate. So I thought we'd better bring it back. And we need a demo. I'm going to show you Turbo 360 in a minute, but I need a bit of fun to get us started. So I thought, right, can we stick AI into Minecraft? So really simple game here, and I've got these little things called turtles, which is really like a bot. So think of it a bit like a rover. It goes around and it does stuff. And I've got one called Bob the Builder. And I kind of thought, can we use AI to tell the builder, the bot, what to build? So I've basically, I've got a turtle here, and we've got a little command on him called wait for command. So he's listening on port 54 is his agent ID. And then I'm obviously Steve here, and as Steve, I can do some commands here. So I can't remember what the turtle bot was as a good start to my demo. What was it, 54? So I can do commands from, so here I've got a tablet in Minecraft, right? And I can send a command to that bot. So I'm going to connect to bot 54, and we need a command. So I've got a command called build me, but now I need a prompt. So I'm going to take a massive gamble here and open to the room. Who's got an idea of what we should try and build in Minecraft? And if nobody picks, Ricardo can pick. I've only got 64 blocks available though, so you're going to have to be within that constraint.
I want a nice snug log cabin with a fire.
I think that's quite a lot for 64 blocks. They're all the same colour block as well.
I'll settle for a bombshell to hide from the night horrors that come out in Minecraft.
Right. Right, so we've sent our message. I knew this would happen as well. I can't remember the command to stop it raining. So Bob the Builder's off on his way there. So the one thing I can't promise is we all know AI is sometimes a bit funky in what it does. So I'm hoping he's going to start building something here, because sometimes it just builds garbage, but we'll see what he comes up with. Right, so what we'll do, we'll leave him building. He's off on his way, and I've got another one that I thought we'll have another try just as a backup in case we have demo gremlins. So we've got one called Khufu, who, if anybody knows, is Khufu's the guy who designed the Great Pyramid. So we'll have Khufu try to build us a pyramid as well. So we'll do send command to 55. Right, so what I'll do, while he's doing that, if you notice at the bottom here, you can see he called out to Azure API management there, and he's off now doing his thing. I think what I might do while that's running, I'm just going to try and remember the command weather clear. Try and stop it raining. If only it was this simple, wasn't it? Right, so there's Bob the Builder over here. So, I mean, I'm not sure how that's going to help you, Ricardo. To be fair, mind, the zombies are burning in the background, so I don't know if that was part of the code, maybe. Maybe he's wanting you to climb up high. Then let's have a look what the other one's building. Yes, I think is that even the one? That's one of the things I lose which bot it is sometimes. But anyway, you get the point here. So if anyone wants to learn a bit more about how I do this, I've got a YouTube video about this. And I've also got one coming out next week about comparing Azure OpenAI and DeepSeek and ChatGPT to see who builds the best structures. Now, we're going to have a look. We're going to have a look at the Turbo 360 stuff in a second. But really what I want to do is to show you what's kind of going on behind the scenes. So we've got our little bot here in the game, and I can, the different Minecraft computers, I can connect to each other and send them messages. So I sent him a prompt, which Ricardo kindly gave us. And he calls out to Azure API management, out to Logic Apps, calls the model, and then with the, we've got some instructions telling us to give us back some code. So the AI model develops the code that we're going to run, and then we download it back to the bot, and then he'll just dynamically execute it, and then hopefully we get a house, obviously, with some caveats on that. Okay, so if we think of the idea here, this is really just like a typical IoT bot type agent doing stuff. But coming back to what really the talk's about is we need to figure out how we're going to support some kind of solution like this. So there's a whole bunch of problems we've got. One, I've got technical components to support. So I've got my Logic Apps and my my API management. Are they healthy? What they're doing? We've got like a whole bunch of risks to think about. So if we think about the cost management side, I think the guys in the keynote actually missed this off one of their slides. Of one of the challenges is, right, I've only got so many MSDN credits. How do I make sure I don't blow all my credits on tokens for the AI? And then we've got things like, well, what if we want the users to be able to see what things are going on here? So let's have a look at what some of that might look like. So if we go to Turbo 360 here, so we've got these 4 different modules, and we're going to have a look at probably 3 of them here. So the first one is the business application model, and this is really about how do I support my technical components as an application. So if you remember in Azure, one of the challenges is they're spread all over the place. I know my demo environment, my APIM's in one resource group, my Logic Apps are in another, some things I've got in other subscriptions. How do I create that single view? So if you've seen previous demos we've done, we've got this nice structure of different teams and different applications and stuff. But for my AI apps, I've just created a nice simple one here, and I've got my Minecraft Builder AI app here. So you can see I've got a bunch of resources in it, and 4 or 5 Logic Apps and API management stuff, operations, that kind of thing. And the first thing I find useful is, because I can never find them in Azure, it's really easy to just click out and jump out from here to the Azure portal, where I can easily find my actual stuff in Azure, which is problem number 1. But actually in Turbo 360, we've got 2 concepts. We've got the resource concept and the application concept. And that application concept, I think, Azure are starting to do that stuff in that space, but for years they've never really thought about the concept of an application. So here I've got my logical grouping, and I can do a few things at this application level. So number 1, I can have dashboards, a bit like workbooks, but you've got the context of the app that they're actually belonging to. So I can see, I can see my different AI usage here, my Logic app, and I can just build the things that really matter to me. If you think about my use cases, about me as a developer, I want to empower my support user so he stops coming and bothering me because I want to be building new stuff. That's really what we're trying to do here. So a little bit of work, you can let that person do much more. We also have the service map. So here I've got my dashboard. I've got it connected to my different monitoring I've got in place, so I can see my Logic app still healthy. If it goes unhealthy, I can heat zone into where the real problem is. I can also do things like automated tasks. So I'm going to come back to this in a second when you see the link here. But if you imagine, something like a maintenance window, the support person needs to shut this app down on a Sunday night because we've got some support problems. So we can create an automated task to do that kind of thing. And I can shut the app down and, shut it, like start it back up again. But I can actually just do it with 1 click. I can just go run in there, it does it without the support person thinking, right, I've got 50 resources here, which ones do what? How do I do that? Now, when it comes to the resources themselves, I want to talk a little bit about the AI resource, because I think we've got some quite cool stuff in here. So in previous years, we've talked a lot about, the different Logic app features. So you've got that support-friendly view for Logic apps, so we can do the things a support person needs to do without having to worry about them accidentally going and breaking the code or anything. But here in the the cognitive services resource, which is the AI model. One of the things we've got that's really easy to set up, I always remember, I'm not sure if he's in the room today, but Simon from Affinis, I always remember something he said to me, which was, Mike, how do I make it easy so that when I deploy my app, I can just get it monitored without spending hours and hours trying to configure all this stuff? And we've done videos about that in the past, but that whole use case of 3 or 4 clicks, there's your monitoring in place for your app. That's really a big win for people like Simon. But one of the ones I quite like here is I've got this processed inference token. So if you remember before, I said actually we need to think about how much is my model going to cost to run. So what I can do here is I can set a threshold. So I've set a limit on number of tokens. So when the Turbo 360 monitoring takes place, we'll check how many tokens you've processed since we last checked. And if you're going to break that threshold, so we can raise an alert, which is great. You're processing too many tokens. I always remember Rick's got some great stories about this circuit breaker idea. So if I'm processing too many tokens, my costs are going to creep up. But actually, we can go beyond just an alert. And if you notice here, I've got a link to my automated task to go and shut the Logic app down. So actually, anybody, imagine I've got 100,000 kids in the game playing Minecraft, all asking for, build me all this crazy stuff. And actually, if they're going to blow my budget, my metric will fire, it'll trigger my automated task, and we'll just go and shut the Logic app down. They'll all get a bunch of errors, but I've protected my budget so I don't bankrupt Saravana, which would be, we wouldn't want to be doing that. Now, from this perspective, really, hopefully business applications has shown you that this is where we can do that technical component level support, but we've got other things to think about. So the next one's going to be cost analyzer. So I need to think about not just the cost, not just the running of it, but the cost of it. So here I've got a little app in my cost analyzer where I've just created a wrapper around my Minecraft demo costs, so I can easily see, I want to do a cost review of how it's doing. So you can see I'm not actually spending much here, but I can easily see how much I've spent in May versus June and what the changes have been. I can do a nice little one here where I can see the individual meters from the AI resource, so I know how much I'm spending on each model. So one of our customers actually uses this quite a bit for tracking how much each of their teams, when they're doing research, spends on each model. And then we can obviously do things like triggering the budget. Here you can see, because I've been playing around with my demo a bit, I'm not that far off my budget now, but we can trigger if we need to and react to that. And I think actually you notice I got an anomaly the other day because I was trying to get my demo to work, so I used a lot of tokens. Now, so we've looked at cost and we've looked at support, but what about business users? So this is where our BAM module comes in. And if you imagine, I guess if I go back to my diagram here, so Turbo 360 is really looking this way at some of these resources, health, but we've got a number of different ways you can use BAM. So I'm going to come on to some of the new ways in a minute, but currently the way I can use BAM in this case, I can send events to Turbo 360 to tell it about what's going on. So if you imagine here in my AI demo, so I've got my Minecraft Turtlebot here, and I've got my tracking. So I've actually had my API management and my Logic app sending events to Turbo 360. So straight away here I can see, we had the call from Kufu and we had the call from Bob the Builder. And I was just promoting some data so I know which model they were using. The agent ID and the agent name came from the game itself. The tokens come from the Logic app, response from the AI. And I could say, right, well, let's imagine we've got the scenario of, not the developer, but we want the business user to be able to look at what's going on here. And the business user could come in and they could say, all right, well, here's the steps we went through. So we've got, the API management request, we've got the prompt received, etc. So I can maybe go in and look at, what was the prompt looking like? So, we can archive message bodies. So that was the prompt we send. And then we can go and, good example here for troubleshooting. I think it's this one. I can save the code that came back from the AI model. So I can have a look at, what the code was if I want to troubleshoot it and that kind of thing. So we've got some nice ways we can just make this data available at a higher level so your business operations can actually use it. I think there's another one I quite like actually as well. I've got some saved views which are quite cool. So, everybody's interested in AI responsibility. So we can just promote some data about the response from the OpenAI, so I can see, these messages were all healthy in terms of hate, self-harm, and so on and so on. So it's easy to surface that data again. Right, now I think we'll go and have a look at our next demo now. So we've got, that was one example with Azure OpenAI. So we've got that, kind of, in this case, the chat-based experience using generative AI. But there's other types of AI that we're going to be building solutions on. So a good one could be Azure AI Document Intelligence. So I've got a little demo here where in this case, we get a storage account, which ends up with some PDFs in it. So in our case for demo, I use our Azure invoice PDFs, and I want to just play around with them. So brilliant use case here. Logic Apps can pick them up from the storage account. We can either do it on a polling basis or an event-driven basis, depending on our requirements. I think if I remember right, I'm doing a polling basis because I have a batch of them, and then I'll have like an individual Logic App run for each one in the batch. We call our Azure Document Intelligence, and we basically say, right, tell me what's going on with this invoice. So the AI magically pulls out all the key invoice data. And I've got the metadata now to be able to call into an API, which could then, thinking of customer stuff I've done before, I can just front-end SAP. So I can pull out all the vendor information, the invoice number, the PO number, send the attachment to SAP, but actually load it in properly. And I haven't had to write all the magic parsing code myself. I've just used the AI to do it. Now, one of the things this lets me do, this demo, is I can start showing you one of the new features that we've done that I think is really quite cool. So we'll just have a quick look before we go on the BAM feature. We'll have a look in Business Apps again and just show you, really what this would look like. So I've drawn that diagram just before, but the point of the service map is to make it look like the design diagram. So it's easy for the support people to see something they recognize. But obviously, again, this is clickable. So even the AI resource, I can see some of the things that I can monitor. The API operation, I can say I've got no failed requests. So this monitoring's all driven off either metrics or KQL queries. But the new thing that we added for BAM was we took a lot of customer feedback around BAM. So some people really, really love BAM because it gives you all these rich user experience features, which are, you need to make integration visible. So that there's a quote from integration team I always remember. They hate this idea of integration as a black box where everything's hidden away. We need to show the business the value of what we deliver, and BAM's a great way to do that. But one of the challenges some customers have had is they struggle to, they've already built their solution. So this idea of sending events to our BAM module meant they would have had to change the code to do that. So we had to look for a way of, can I give you another option? And that's one of the things we've put in. So here, if you notice this little gray bar at the top, I've got this, this is what I call the push model. So you push me an event. But we also added a pull model since last integrate. So I can swap over. And the idea is I want to give you as similar an experience as possible. And you can actually use the two side by side if you want. But here in my finance department, you can see we've got all these invoices. We should have some invoices. There we go. So we have got some invoices. And the grid looks the same. That's the point. It looks very similar. You can see I promoted some data like my invoice ID, my vendor, my my invoice amount and stuff. But the big difference is I haven't sent anything to Turbo 360. I haven't changed the line of code in the Logic app. We're actually driving this from either application insights or log analytics data. So basically you can bring a few KQL queries stick them in Turbo 360, and then you can build this view here. So that, you know, I can click on one of my options here, and it'll go and query the details. You can see I've got the steps that I went through. So a bit, you know, a bit like the diagram again. We received a message, we analysed it with the AI, we submitted to SAP, and we can do with the KQL queries. What's quite cool as well is I can also do like craft a URL in it. So one of the things we support is if you craft the URL for the Logic app or for App Insights, I can just click through straight into the Azure portal if I need to, and I can go and open the run history, and I can, you know, go down to the developer level if I want to. But you can stick on top that, I'll give that a minute to open because I know Azure's always slow. You know, we can stick this layer on top that's just much more user friendly. We can even do things like search in the query window here. So I can stick invoice IDs in and just make it really intuitive. And all I actually had to do to get that was here in my Turbo 360 Designer. So I just brought some KQL queries. So you can see I've got a query here. And basically the concept, a parent query finds the row. And then when we open the Designer up, you've got one or more child queries that just find all the shapes, and then we just stitch them all together. And it's actually, you know, one of the things I like the most about this is we released the feature and we didn't really tell that many people about it, but some of our customers had just noticed it and started using it without us really realizing it. I can't remember which customer it was now, but some of the guys just blew my mind when they showed me how much they were doing with it. And I was like, man, I didn't even know you knew about this feature yet, which is, it was quite interesting that. But what I can do, you know, if I think beyond just the design experience, you know, so this experience here, you know, I'm finding I can take about 10 minutes to set these up once I've got my my Logic app deployed and stuff. But we've also got in our knowledge base here, there's a whole bunch of samples available down here showing you how to, you know, how do I do it for Logic App Standard? How do I do it for consumption, data factory, API management functions, etc., etc. So there's loads of ways you can use this. But you can even do things like dashboards. So I can create like a business-friendly dashboard. I think I might have to change the time. I think I maybe didn't think this through because I shut down this demo over the weekend and it hasn't come on this morning, which is why there's no date. If I demo you this on a Wednesday, everything looks great. But you can see we've just got some embedded KQL queries in here. We can present them to the business user, build a dashboard, and we can easily shove some KQL queries in the query monitoring over here. So we can monitor for failure conditions, and we can monitor for we can monitor for no data received and all that kind of thing. So it's really just take the queries that you're running anyway. When people raise a support request to you, shove them in Turbo 360 and then get them to do it themselves and save yourself loads of time. That's really what I'm hoping this empowers. Okay, so the last demo I'd like to talk about is business process tracking. So I don't want to steal Microsoft's thunder too much because I know their sessions later about business process tracking. So I'm not going to go too much into talking about what business process tracking does. I want to focus on what we do on top of it. So when we added the data queries feature, the way this works is behind the scenes. So Microsoft have got the magic that takes the runtime through your business process and into an ADX database behind the scenes. And you basically configure a tracking profile, which I'm sure Kent's team will show tomorrow. And you end up with all this data going in here. And what we've done with Turbo 360, because we've now got the KQL support to query App Insights and Log Analytics, we've just literally last week just released support for ADX. So now I can stitch those all together into one big combined view. Now, what makes that really cool is if I go to this demo over here, so I've got my Railcard GPS demo. So we'll have a quick look at what that looks like. So I've got my events coming from a third party. This is based on a real application I built a few years ago. Luciano will remember this one if he's here. So we have events coming in from rail cars traveling around. They hit our service bus. We have logic apps, pick them up, process them, and update CRM and update SAP. And then we've got a bit of functions involved helping us process the events. And obviously there's an app service and being Logic App Standard, it's the app itself plus the workflow, which is different to consumption. So, we've got support for all of that in Turbo 360. But the bit we've added that's really cool is supporting this from a like a level 2, level 1, or business user perspective. We can use that KQL query with both ADX and Log Analytics and App Insights, and I can kind of create this view here. So if you notice, I've got all my different railcar events. Some of them are from the same railcar. I know whether they were successful or not. I can click on one and we'll go and execute these child queries. And then if you notice here, my first shape comes from API management. So that came from App Insights. My next shape, all the Logic App ones, they actually come from business process tracking. So this was where I haven't touched my Logic App. In fact, we'll have a look at the business process tracking profile. So I've got this one here. And so here I've basically configured quite a simple shape. I've mapped it to my actions in my Logic App, and I end up with my data in my database. But the challenge I have here for me is part of the problem is that I can only really search by one ID. My business users aren't going to be able to manage the Azure portal. My L2 support people probably can't manage it, and I probably need to give them such elevated permissions to do what they want to do. There's like a million reasons why this is going to be helping developers, but challenging for support people. But over here, we've just stitched them all together. So this one here comes from Logic App Standard. So you can see I've got a bunch of metadata down here that I've promoted. Again, I've got click-through support. I can just put a URL in the KQL query, and I can jump straight to the Logic App runtime. Likewise, I could, I think I've done it on here. Maybe I haven't, but we've got examples in the documentation of how to add the App Insights link. So you just one click straight into the run history and App Insights if you need it. And I think that, that to me, having that combined view across your components, that now is searchable. So a really good example would be, I don't want to search by my business ID. I want to search for every event related to that load slip. I need to know that equals there. So I can just search for all the events for that rail car. I can do other business IDs, not just that primary ID. I think is really powerful as well. I can likewise do my dashboards here. So we'll see these come up. I've built this dashboard from a combination of ADX plus App Insights, and I can just create the visuals that really matter for the business users. And then I can even do the monitoring as well. So that query monitor we saw before, I can just, query here for how many failed events have I had in the last hour. I can do ones for have I gone an hour without receiving any events, trigger an alert on that. So there's loads of ways that you can, as a developer, just spend a very small amount of time, supercharge your operations users, and then free up a lot of your time for the next number of months. Okay, so in Turbo 360 then, so if we think, when we come to the AI and integration bit, the key bits were plug in your AI resources now. So right now, if you're building an AI solution, there's stuff you can do to help reduce that support burden. We simplify your monitoring experience. You can go from zero to hero, which is a big message we try to use really quickly. And then business activity monitoring, it's really about business users and support users who aren't developers. We can empower them to do more, but we now have support for 3 other data sources, which really opens up more ways you can use it, and it reduces those barriers to entry. You don't have to send me an event now, which I think was one of the big sticking points for a lot of people. Now, one of the things I've learned over the last year or so, where a lot of people have misconceptions about Turbo 360, what was Serverless 360 and previously Service Bus 360. Some customers were only actually doing Service Bus, and we get chatting to them and we find out like what's important to you, what you're struggling with, and there's like loads of things they keep telling me, and I'm like, oh, you can already do that in Turbo 360, and they just didn't realize because they've only ever looked at in some cases the Service Bus use case or very specific use cases. So I want to share a couple of stories because people might be able to, if you're a customer already, potentially you can do more than what you thought. So, go beyond Service Bus, go beyond integration, web apps. So some customers might support various app service-based stuff. So here's a great example: MySQL database, PHP on a web app, front door. I can support that side by side in just a different part of the tree view than where my integration team is. So we start moving towards that single pane of glass, which I think, from a cloud operating model perspective is really important and is actually really difficult to get to. Power Automate's a new thing we've added as well. I think we might have added it just before last year, if I remember, but I get a lot of customers we speak to who, either they're doing CRM projects where they're building loads of Power Automates and don't know how to support them, or they've had departments go and do stealth IT, build a mission critical Power Automate, and then go to the IT department. There you go, you run with it, and the IT department doesn't know what to do. So we can actually put that side by side in Turbo 360. So you could have, maybe a Power Automate leverages a function app and a SQL as your database and something else. So you can actually monitor them as a group. And, think about like you're monitoring a solution, not a resource, is really the key thing. Data Factory is getting quite popular actually as well. We speak to quite a few customers who want to do Data Factory. And I think on that, actually, if anybody's doing Fabric, I'm quite keen to hear from you, because we've had a few people who've asked us for Fabric features. So if anybody would like to, come and share their experiences, as a product owner, I'm really keen to learn more about that. And then API solutions, so not just logic apps, but if we're building APIs, here's a good example: functions, API operations, Cosmos. We can just do the same thing here. It's one more slide than I thought I had there. We've got functions with messaging as well. So all these different kinds of solutions is the key thing. Now, I think my final point I want to really get across is Turbo 360 is about, for you guys, it's about leveling up your integration platform. Can we put something over the top that helps your business see more value in the integration platform? Because, if we think back years ago at Integrate, the common message that businesses always think about integration is, whether it be BizTalk, logic apps, function apps, they always get a bit of a bad rap, and you hear customers, they only ever complain about it because they only ever see the bad thing. It's very rare you see customers go, oh, I really love logic apps, but the problem is they don't know how important they are to their business, because all of the, the black box idea from integration, it's all hidden away. They see the problems, they don't see the value, and hopefully Turbo 360 helps address some of the problems, but makes the value visible in a way that makes everybody's job easier to build solutions that customers love. And I hope you guys enjoyed the session there. I don't know if we've got time, Young, for questions. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free. Or if anybody wants to, feel free to come to the desk during the breaks, and we'll happily have a chat with you a bit more. But thank you for listening otherwise.